Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning. All right, the clicker. The clicker. Huh. All right. So one of the things I want to talk about a little bit first is that I am a teacher and an artist. So balancing, education and working with young people over the years has been, um, and still staying in the studio and staying balanced is definitely, I wouldn't say a struggle, but it's a lot of fun, and it's great to see that you guys aren't currently up and like moving around. Everyone is just so focused. This is just weird to me. This is crazy. Everyone's listening to me. Jeez. Bathroom break, anyone? Bathroom break? Okay. Sorry. All right. So once again, museum school grad, Yale grad, and I want to start off first with one of the things that has been kind of running through my consciousness. Growing up here in America, being an immigrant, my family came here with an American dream. They said, Marlon, we want you to move. We want to take you from Guyana and we want to bring you to America so that you can be better. And the current media and kind of climate in America around immigration has been fraught with these ideas about otherness, about the potential or the lack of potential of people who come here. And I wanted to speak to that because I am a representation of immigration. You know, my family came here to build something. And all the things that you hear about me that are positive, that are great, it's because of their value, their dedication to what America is. And I know that there's not many people here who are American Indian, but so I would say that we've all come from that soil and from that dream. So I wanted to just take a moment and speak to that. Um, all right, so we'll start with my work. As you see here in the background, I have some images, and so let's jump into it. Let me see. I'm not great with a clicker. I'm usually good with a ruler, not with a clicker. So let's see. Oh, went back. Oh wow, yeah, look at that. All right. So the first image that you see in front of you is of a sailboat. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, he must be a sailor. But no, I'm not a sailor. And why would I have a sail with my name on it? Wouldn't make much sense, would it? So I was lucky enough after graduate school at Yale that they reached out to me to take part in the Pan Am Games, which is very similar to the Olympics, but it just represents a smaller group of countries that somehow, they need their own Olympics. I don't know why, but anyways, and so they took one of my large collages and mixed media works, and they used that to place it on a 20-foot sail and sail it to represent Guyana. And so this for me was really a cycle, like finally a kind of revolution, an evolution, where I felt like the voice of my grandmother, my father, who had passed away, kind of manifested in the work, in the symbol. Um, so let me continue on. Yeah, and they sailed it. And they sailed it with 32 other artists from Peru, from around the world, who were selected, top artists who were selected too as well. And they televised it on the Toronto, on the lake there, Ontario. So let me move on. All right, so here are some of the ideas that I've been thinking about. And I'm not going to go into each idea, but it will at least give you a sense. You'll probably forget. It's all right. You'll probably forget the term. It's all right. But you may not. One of the first terms at the top is Afro Modern. So Afro Modern is basically a movement that is happening in Africa, where artists who are designers, creative thinkers, are using the aesthetic culture of Africa. If you think about the work of Picasso and Cubism, right? That was a manifestation of African his interaction engagement with African sculptures, specifically the mask and the deconstructed face, created a huge transition and huge change in our history in that work. Anyway, so Afro Modern, I feel that my work being diasporic, being from Guyana, Anyone here from Guyana? Anyone from Guyana? Oh, man, jeez. No one from Guyana, jeez. All right, close. All right, close. Someone close. Tobago, Trinidad. Take something and wave. Hey, you know what? This might get a little interactive. All right, I might turn into a real teacher. I might take some. Can I get a wave real quick? Come on, take something and wave. Come on, let's go. Take something and wave. All right, take something and wave. Wave. Hey, okay, all right. Don't get into carnival mode. It's gonna get crazy in here. All right. Sorry. Okay. Get back into my own. Sorry. So, post-black also is a part of this movement. At Yale, I was working with, curators, all the top curators. We had Peter Haley. Robert Storr was the first American to actually do the Venice Biennial. And so he was really thinking of the artists learning who were of color to think about how does their body, their life relate to the art history. He wanted to juxtapose. How do you juxtapose who you are innately? And so this work that I've been creating has been built on some of these, ideological, specifically theoretical ideas. And this equilibrium is about the instability of things. Space and place is something that you will see in the work. Thinking about how does a space become a place? How do we as creatives turn this room into a place by our bodies being here, right? By adding the chairs, adding all these adornments and signifiers to the space to make it something that it's lived in, right? That has memories. Prosumers and prosumption. That's a little bit about the commodity system, thinking about how we freely produce for commodity systems, how we do group thinking, and participatory artwork and groupthink design. Let's jump into it, all right? I forgot my shirt. Yes. So this work came right out of Yale, right? Here I was smashed together with all these great artists from everywhere, and I started to think about myself. What about me? What about the gaze? And so in African culture, there's a thing called masking, right? And so they would wear a mask of an ancestor or whomever, and they would place this mask, and they would be transformed into, Ogun, the god of war, and they would dance and they would talk. And this was a way of telling stories, but also translating your own cultural narrative, right? And all human societies actually do this thing called masking, whether it's Halloween, whether it's, Christmas or what have you. So I used the basketball, and I also wanted to elevate. So I found some symbols and signifiers, right? I found that the basketball, being an athlete, part of my tool bag, if you want to call it that. And so I placed it on a pedestal. Anytime you place something on a pedestal, it moves from low to high, right? Because it's about domination, but it's also about power and acknowledging these power systems. I was reading Foucault at this time, right? Foucault talks about power and knowledge within society and social systems and how they can affect change, right? How do we identify as leaders within the system? All right, so anyways, so I elevated the ball, and let me move on. So I worked with photographers. This isn't obviously painting. These are all photographs, and they were collages. Yeah. So I was collaging digitally, right? I was cutting. Anytime you cut something, it's a violent act, right? It's about deconstructing and reconstructing the idea of who you are, your identity. So I placed my body at the lower part, and then the ball, and in that way, it's about this space really in between. What exists in between here? Especially in terms of sports and black male body, in terms of this gaze within the commodity system we live in. And so I also started thinking about a movement. Raise your hand if you remember planking. Raise your hand if you planked. I planked. Man, I'm aging myself. So I'll for those of you who do not know, now planking was a movement. It was like one of the first media we were all planking because it was like, yo, that's crazy. You know, it's crazy. But we were planking because it actually was that before the ice bucket challenge, it was how people could connect around an idea of a collective consciousness. You know, so planking. I'll just show you guys, not to turn into a robot, but hands to the side like so, feet all the way up, and you're laying down flat on top of something. And it could be on top of anything. You know, you could plank, and people would score each other. They'd be like, yo, that plank was crazy. You know, they would plank in between two different things, and you're like, oh, there's space underneath. Wow. Wow. Anyways, so sorry. Now, my students do say, Mr. Forrest, you think you're funny. You really think you're funny. I don't know. Anyways, so in this work, I'm located on Newberry Street. And what I wanted to do was think about the slave passage. Now, instead of turning myself down prone, looking down, I wanted to look up. And I wanted to think about how my body or the body of my ancestors were transported from Africa to Guyana, to Peru, not Peru, to South America, to all over the place. And so this series called Passing, my father passed away, actually, literally, the year before I graduated from Yale. And he believed in me. He said, you know, son, Marlon, do whatever you want to do, Marlon. I believe in you, son. And in that voice, it evokes something very powerful, how you would pass the ball to me. I could go into lists of being all city, all state, going to prep school, having a full ride as an athlete. Those are things that I achieved, trying to play overseas in Holland. Those are things that I did. But I was always had this artist gene and mindset in me. So anyways, in this passing scene, I was thinking about how do you activate spaces in which people find as a normal public space, you know? And so these performance pieces moved from here to here. And the ball started to become, as I did more and more of this work, the ball started to become like an iconic symbol. It started to become kind of like a point of focus, you know? But only because it existed in space still. You know, it was frozen in time. And so here I am in front of the church in Copley, and this young lady is just like, whoa, what the hell is he doing? What is he doing? But also I wore a uniform. Like I wanted to strip my body away of some of the signifiers that I think are about branding and commodification. And I started wearing this all black because, not just because of all artists wear it, you know, when they're doing performance stuff, yeah, I wanted to be really different. But I also started thinking about becoming part of a collective versus an individual. You know, when I play on the field, playing on the court, there are people around us. We're working collectively to a goal, right? Continue on. And then before those spaces in my earlier series of passing was a little bit more, I think, I wouldn't say random, but they were more actively engaged. I then started thinking about symbols of power, institutional power, the state house where laws are made, where bodies like my own hope that those laws will reflect some of the things that I grew up in Boston, understanding that Boston is also segregated, you know, and acknowledging the fact that because of that segregation, some of the laws don't always work for everyone, right? And then the colors started changing. I started thinking about essentially how could this ball manifest and become less of a ball, but more of an iconic symbol. And so I started collaborating. This photography work is with Jerry Russo, who actually is now the photographer for the Boston Red Sox. And so he does all the photography for Boston Red Sox. That's my man, Jerry. And this is, you know, museum school. You know, it's a family affair, but beautiful work. I have a kind of interesting story. at the time in Boston, there was a period where, as a young person living in the inner city, it was very difficult to understand how do you navigate the space between being young, but then also being policed too as well. So there's some ideas of play around that. Let's continue. Next, I finally came to a point where I realized that I'm part of a tribe. Being an athlete, but being an athlete in an African American, growing up, being West Indian, growing up in an African American or American society, I wanted to know for myself, who could I use as mentors? And so those mentors I found actually at the basketball court. I found older black men. I found older men. Didn't find many women, but if they were there, they were mentored. But this was a space that started to become a ritual space, right? A place where I came, I worked, but then I also started thinking about civil rights. And I started thinking about how the church itself was also a manifestation of protests, but also the voice of the people could be heard through the church. And so there's a story I'm going to share with you just very quickly. If you know Chris Paul, you might have heard of him, right? Chris Paul talks about one thing. He shares his father, his grandfather was actually killed when he was about 60 years old. And he played in a game where he scored 60 points. But listen to this. The entire team tried to stop him from scoring that 60 points. And the crowd, it was on the day after his grandfather died. And the crowd knew this. And they were like celebrating him. They were like, once they knew, the word passed. And they were like, oh, yeah, he's at 49 points. The other team, coach was like, no, we've got to stop him now. He literally had 3 defenders on him at times. And he was finding subtle niches, little spaces in between to get his shot off. He's at 59 points. And he gets fouled, and he goes to the line. It takes 2 dribbles, and he hits that last shot for 60 points. And the entire crowd who knew that his grandfather had died celebrated with him. And so, just like church is about spirituality, what kind of church you go to doesn't have to be Christian, but everyone has a space that they go to for meditation. And I found that this was the space where I went for my meditation. I went to seek my peace when the world wasn't, always treating me the way I wanted to be treated. So this series of installations, public, I incorporate different kinds of balls, different textures in the pew. And then this is located in Dorchester, Dudley Street. And then I also asked young people to play with me, to also take part in this ritual together, making space. And then so I moved from that space to the gallery. The gallery. Well, because within the gallery, you have certain limitations, right? This is a show that I did at the, I think it's Medicine Wheel, and where I used about 2,000 balloons, latex balloons, and blew them up and created this installation because I wanted to talk about the idea of flight and about transcendence. You think a balloon is supposed to be flying, but here it is on the ground. And what does that talk? What does that say to us when we experience that? And then I also ask people to play in it. Play has been a big part of my work. Always asking people to go beyond themselves, to take part in something as a collective. And in that, I want to say the buzzword justice, right? Is that we are all stepping outside of ourselves and becoming the childlike selves that we are, our truest selves, when we play, when you bring yourself to that space. And so I performed too as well, handed out a little bit of cotton. And then they invited me to I started thinking about, right, and redesigning and reconceptualizing the idea of this ritual space. Let me just go back to it just for a second. I'll show you. I started drawing the walls, but then I wanted to use the actual geometry from the courts and start to embed that and I started creating my own language, my own pictographic language. And so these drawings in the Heinz Convention Center, I had a show there, and I started creating, this is about 50 feet, and I started creating these large, I would call them murals, if you want to call that were based on re-articulating the geometric shapes and forms to think about language. Some paintings. You know, got to show the paintings. Got to show the paintings, all right? Can he still paint? And this is on tar paper. Systems within systems. I think about, Russian constructivism. I think about, the Bauhaus, which is where I learned. Basically, if you go to Yale, you went to the Bauhaus. Joseph Albert's, color theory. Color theory started there. All right? Most of the schools in America that are art schools, design schools, came out, their basis is the Bauhaus. All right? I got my man here shaking his head from Germany. Steven, he knows. He knows. He knows. Guten Tag. Guten Morgen. My name is Marlon. Ich komme aus Boston. A little bit of German for you. You guys might not know how to speak it. So once again, collaging, thinking about deconstructing the face. I'm always fighting against the tension of, like I said, the balance and imbalance within my work. And I think even when you guys as designers, how do you find a way to change what is norm, what is normalized, what is easily receptive? Ink, pencil, charcoal. And then, the mouth. How do we digest ideas around identity, place, space? And so, finally, I got to a place where I had an opportunity to have a residency at the New Art Center in Newton. And they said to me, Marlon, well, you have a couple of weeks. We'll give you about a month. And we want you to do something in this space. And I said to myself, damn, I've got 2 kids, right? I got 300, I would say, anyone watch Live in Color? Anyone know In Live in Color? Anyone remember where the West Indian guy says, yeah, man, I got 3 jobs. No, I got 10 jobs, right? Well, I was somewhere in between 3 and 10 at that time, right? So one of the things with this is I wanted to start thinking about how could we then turn this space into a space where you could become the artist. So I posed some questions to the audience. I had them do some drills because, once again, it's about basketball. So they had to do a couple of different kind of procedural steps. They had to do some lunges. Before you make your artwork, you got to stretch out. Get the lunges in. All right? And then they had to do some, another drill was where they had to jump up and draw. Like, they had to, use a marker and try to reach to their potential. Because it's about reaching your highest potential. That's right. If you don't have hops, get up there. So they're there. They had to, they're doing all these drawings, and they can barely reach. It's amazing. I have videos of this. This is amazing. And so, and then also, I also wanted to think about, once again, this idea of power. And I wanted to invite everyone in us to be an artist. Forget your status. Forget where you've been before. You can make something. So I asked, anyone could come in. There was a timer. You didn't have a lot of time. All right? People were behind you. They were lined up. But anyone could use the material of tape, which was what I used, tape primarily. And we had different forms of tape, different lines of tape. And the question to them was, respond to a work of art without disrespecting someone else's, without intruding on someone else's. So as a collective, they had to come together, right? Respect someone else's space, and also find a way to play. And then also I started thinking about 2 things. One is the meta experience, right? The idea of voyeurism, right? Being a voyeur. And thought about power, the power of the gaze, the power of looking, right? Thought about my body. Now we're activating spaces. What next? So we had a live stream at the same time. So you could go on your phone and be working on your artwork and be like, oh, shoot, John, did you see me? I just did. Oh, dude, push that tape over a little bit more. Make it better. So you could have a conversation with someone and still be working on your art and activating it. So people started coming in. It turned from 100 to 200. Then it was like 300. I mean, one time I came in, the place was absolutely packed. And there was no who's better, who's worse. It was about everyone helping to activate the space. And so I don't have a large image of it, but I moved from that to the Cadillac building right down the road. Boom, that way. All right. And they said, hey, Marlon, come in. We'll give you another 50 feet to activate. And so there was a question once again. And I just started realizing that I was starting to become a coach, Coach Marlon. All right. And so I did one thing, which is I made sure that I always created the frame. Even the circular forms here, I drew and painted those. The outer lining, the pedestal was painted. And I created a frame because I wanted there to be a space where at least there were some rules. I just couldn't completely go away from it. Some rules in there, But other than that, the floor and the wall were part of the painting. There were no rules here, all right, except staying inside those boundaries. And then so, finally, I ended up, they said to me, Marlon, hey, we want you to come to, Montserrat College of the Art, and we want you to do something. And so I worked with their summer artist program, and, these guys were like, let me show you how a student who comes to the summer art program walks when they're like serious about their art. They walk like this. Yeah. Let's get in there. Do I got my pencils? Am I ready? Okay. And then they look around. They look. She's another artist. Is she better than me? Okay. You see? All right. See some anxiety in their eyes. Okay. Let's go. And so they absolutely destroyed this piece. And, because they were artists, they were also looking at the history of installation art. So they started playing around with perspective. There were some times when I actually stood in the middle of this space and felt like the floor, I got disequilibrium. I said I was going to say that again. I got unbalanced and unstabilized. Because all of these images of us, of others, their voices came together. And here are just backshots, just some of the students that were helping me out. I did jump in once again, and I did create the circular shape, which you would see either at the half court or the free throw line. And then in this show, I started incorporating these pedestals, pedestals where materials could be at. Yeah. So when you start to think about this idea of Afro Modern, or think about post-black, or you start thinking about deconstructionist theories, or you start thinking about your body, the collective consciousness is powerful. Powerful. And then so, transitioning back into the classroom as a teacher and educator, I said, how can I get these young people to start to see what I see? So I started collaborating in my classroom with a local design house called Mathematic Athletics. I'm part of Northeastern's AMART program, which is called the African American Masters Artist Residency Program. This program has been around before I was born. I'm one of the youngest artists in this program. It's amazing. And so they've had a partnership with Northeastern and Boston Public Schools, where I work. And so we had this art reality showcase. Now, the thing about it was that I wanted to approach art through the context of core ideas that had to do with art history. So this is all around Black power, Black art movement, Black history. And so we also worked in collaboration with the ELA teacher, the history teacher, to help give the work a certain level of richness, context. We also started thinking about design lab, a made lab, where students, Converse came in. Love Converse. They came in and talked about branding design theory, and they talked about consumer ideas, specifically around how one purchases and what you can imagine your capabilities. So they workshop, artist talks, residencies, and so things that Bryan High School will definitely turn around because of hopefully some of the work that I'm doing, but what the students are doing. We also collaborated working with ICA Boston. All right, Wall Talk. It's an opportunity for students who are coming from these communities to get a chance to experience, you know, something outside of the norm. How do we break these boundaries and walls so that we can create a community that's just as diverse as what we dream about at times? And then, almost at the end, common for all. So I was able to reach out to Elkis Manfredi, which is the largest architectural company in Boston. And they decided to work with me in my my 2D class, I think it's 2D design class, my AP 2D design class. And so we found a building that Emerson College is building. It's right across from the Boston Commons. You can go down there right now. And the students imagine what the top 2 floors would be for a community center. You know, we went to the art, we walked through the inners of the building, stripped down. We walked through with our hard hats, yes, right? We went over to the actual Elkis Manfredi, located in Dry Dock. We went over there and saw the designers working, right? We wanted to give them a sense of project-based learning, real projects, real life experience. How do you engage and change the educational system too as well? We got to activate it, activate it. All right, and then wrapping up with Nike. Who likes Nike here? I like them too. But so they also came through, and I was able to work with them on Unimaginable You. All right? Basically, all over the world, they had these locations and hubs where they were working with artists to help reimagine Nike clothing, sneakers. And so we were the only location in New England that we had this opportunity for young people to get that exposure. So for me, that's Mo Pope. I'm going to jump right back. Oh, can I do it? Can I do it in time? Can I do it in time? To wrap up, Mr. Forrester, come on, you can do it. Come on now. Oh, did I call myself Mr. Forrester? Yeah. So this idea of participatory artwork is beyond just participating. It's about education, and it's about transforming how you see and perceive the world as a collective, all right? And I want to, once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm so humbled to be here. Thank you, Sophia. Oh, my gosh. Geez, give me a hug. Yes. All right. And let me give the mic back to her. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.